The cloud banks over Linares always carried a bruised tint, as though twilight had decided to keep one foot in the sky even at noon. The scholars blamed the volcanic dust from Mount Voron to the south. The priests spoke of divine melancholy, and the merchants insisted it made the silk dyes look richer. But among the old stone gutters and gargoyle-lined gutters of St. Gallien's Basilica, a quieter explanation fluttered in the city's collective memory. The Cobalt Gargoyle Choir liked the sky best when it matched their skin. I learned that legend on my first day as Linares's municipal bell-keeper 5 years ago, when Master Draven pressed the iron key of the bell tower into my palm. "Keep your ears open," he said with his habitual half-grin, "and your conscience clearer than the bells." At 21, I thought he meant avoiding rust and pigeons. By 26, on the eve of the blue moon, I knew he had been warning me about something vaster. A blue moon? 2 full moons in a single month arrives seldom enough, but in Linares it carries an extra syllable of dread. That is the only night, so the story claims, when the choir of cobalt gargoyles awakens, cracks its mineral throats, and sings a verdict over the hearts of everyone who sleeps beneath the city's chipped slate roofs. If their harmony rings true, Linares prospers. If discord twists the chords, misfortune unspools before dawn. The chronicles show an unsettling correlation. After the blue moon of 1732, the plague of white ash. After 1811, the market riots. The last one, in 1968, brought a drought that lasted 3 years. Tomorrow, they said, would bring another blue moon. Above the copper domes, the moon was already swelling pale, portentous, impossibly bright. I had planned to ring the midnight peal alone, yet at dusk a knock rattled the tower door, and Uriel Ander, resident street violinist and self-appointed historian of urban legends, stepped into the lamplight. He was carrying a stack of parchment scrawled with charcoal, bow tucked beneath one arm. "You've read the ballads, Astra," he said, as though continuing a conversation we hadn't started. "But have you read the omissions?" "Omissions are difficult to read," I replied, folding a leather cloth over a clapperbolt. "They're usually, well, omitted." Uriel's grey eyes crinkled. "Exactly. That's why I copied the margins." He spread the parchments across the bell's wooden maintenance platform. Each page bore notes from cathedral diaries, city council minutes, street pamphlets that had long since decayed to dust. I recognized one phrase that surfaced again and again. "Hearts sung true." "They don't judge our deeds," Uriel murmured. "They judge our tune. If a man's heart beats out a self-serving rhythm, the gargoyles weave it into the hymn, off-key, disharmonious, dangerous. The rest of the city hears that sour note and suffers the echo. So we all pay for the worst of us? Unless," he said, smoothing the last page, "the worst are fewer than the best. Then the harmony can swallow the discord. Linares is commonly good, Astra, but tomorrow—" He gestured toward the windows, where scaffolding latticed half the skyline. "Mayor Varant's new Civic Heights initiative. They'll quarry St. Gallien's stone for condominiums. The Basilica's choir loft demolished. Its organ melted into tourist medallions. That demolition order becomes official at sunrise, hours after the blue moon sets. Tell me that won't sour the notes." My breath snagged. We can't halt a council decree in one night. And anyway, legends are not levers. Legends are warnings. Uriel gathered his pages. If we cannot change the decree, we can at least change the heart that wrote it. He meant the mayor, which was impossible, illegal, and naive in equal measure. Yet I found myself following him down the spiral stairs, past the darkened nave and into streets that quivered with festival anticipation. A blue moon fair always filled Linares with lanterns the color of seawater. Children chased clockwork fish along the gutters. Vendors sold iridescent pastries dusted with sugar that stained tongues blue. The city was gleaming, oblivious. Oblivion wraps guilt in silk. I kept thinking of Master Draven's farewell, conscience clearer than the bells. Uriel led me through alleys known only to delivery boys and cats until the mayoral residence rose before us. Formerly a monastery, now a marble edifice trimmed with wrought cobalt. 2 stone gargoyles flanked its balcony, less ancient than St. Gallien's but cast from the same shimmering ore. Their eyes flashed skyward, awaiting the moon. "The choir's emissaries," Uriel whispered. "They keep watch on their sleeping master. That is not comforting." The residence gates were guarded, yet a musician's entrance on the east wing hung ajar, perhaps forgotten after a rehearsal for tomorrow's celebratory concert. We slid inside, wet boot soles silent on mosaic floors. My heart hammered a carry-on in my ribs. Uriel seemed tuned to a quieter stave, each step gentle, almost reverent. We found Mayor Viron in his study, flanked by stacks of architecture plans. He was younger than I expected, mid-40s, hair oiled into polite waves. The glow of a banker's lamp etched fatigue into his cheekbones. "Excuse the intrusion," Uriel began, bowing with theatrical flourish. "But Linares petitions its own soul tonight." Veron's hand paused over a drafting compass. "Street performers shouldn't break curfew, sir." I swallowed, forcing civility into brevity. "We mean only to ask you to delay the demolition of St. Gallian." His brow creased. "You serve the Basilica, don't you? The courier said a request might come. The answer is no, we need housing, not relics. The council voted, end of matter." Uriel lifted his violin. "Then let us offer a final relic of that choir loft, a song." Before the mayor could protest, Uriel drew the bow across the strings. A single note rose, hovered, fractured into harmony. He wasn't playing any tune I recognized, yet it felt inevitable, as though memory itself had convinced wood and gut to vibrate. The sound seeped into pillars and window frames. Glass quivered. The mayor's shoulders softened. He closed his eyes. For a moment, I glimpsed the boy he might once have been, kneeling at morning mass beneath St. Gallien's murals. Then the chord resolved, silence settled, and Veron blinked hard. "Beautiful," he whispered, throat tight. "That," Uriel said, "is the key of the Basilica's bells. I reckon they've been ringing in your chest longer than the ambition in your ledger." He laid the violin on the desk. "Delay the demolition until after dawn. Hear what the gargoyles sing. If they bless the plan, tear the old stones down with a clear conscience." The mayor drummed his fingers, gaze flitting from the parchment maps to the instrument. A struggle played across his face, property versus memory, progress versus reverence. At last he exhaled. "Very well. 1 day's stay, but dawn after next, the cranes roll. Now go, before I change my mind." Uriel nodded. We retreated into corridors, hearts marinating in triumph and terror. Outside, the moon had breached the city's rim fully, a coin pressed against wet ink. The fair's lanterns looked drab beneath its glow. We parted ways. I ascended the tower to prepare the midnight peal, and Uriel vanished to fetch his own vigil. Alone among ropes and gears, I listened for tremors in stone. The gargoyles up on the basilica roof were carved in a posture midway between roar and hymn, mouths agape, wings angled like tuning forks. Their cobalt hides drank moonlight, simmered, then shimmered brighter still. Legend said their color came from a meteorite found in the necropolis centuries prior. Some fragments had been forged into instruments, others into guardian statues. None had ever moved. Except, of course, when the moon swelled twice in a month. At 11:59, the tower clock chimed thrice instead of once. Metal in my tools clattered gently, as though coughed upon by wind. An almost liquid warmth pulsed through mortar. I clutched the clapper rope. Midnight struck, the great bell tolled, and from the roof above, a chord answered. It was not wind across spires, nor cats skittering among gutters. It was voices, rich, polyphonic, rolling downward in waves of cobalt resonance. I froze, fingers whitening around rope fibers. The legend breathed. The gargoyle choir awakened. The first verse was wordless. Pure vowel, deep as ravines, bright as forge sparks. Every note travelled the copper pipes of the city's drains, slipped under doorframes, seeped into bedchambers. I saw lanterns flicker in distant squares as sleepers stirred, dragged into a dream they would not remember. Then lyrics blossomed. Old Ruanian, a language kept alive only in hymnals. I could parse fragments. Metal, meet marrow. Moon, unveil shadow. Heart, show your colour. The melody wove through major and minor modes with acrobatic forgiveness, absorbing tiny wobbles the way an ocean forgives pebbles. I clanged the seventh stroke, then let the bell ropes slide away. Its echo did not disturb the gargoyles' pitch. Rather, they folded the peal into their stanza, a guest instrument. The choir had no conductor. They were the conductor, and the city their chorus. Below me, Linares reacted. At the riverfront, fishermen abandoned nets and stood at attention. In dormitories, students sat upright, weeping without shame. Lovers pressed foreheads together, uncertain whether the ache behind their breastbones meant devotion or exposure. And the mayor, I later learned, walked barefoot onto his balcony and met the gaze of the two guardian figures. When they sang, their throats glowed from within, like furnaces built for music. But for some, the sound curdled. On an alley near the Mint, a smuggler spat blood, clutching his chest as though a string inside had snapped. In the caravanserai, a landlord infamous for evictions screamed that his ears were full of daggers. Wherever greed, cruelty, or callous ambition outweighed compassion, people heard dissonance. They heard themselves, stripped of excuses. I felt it too, a small, sour note that belonged to my own cowardice. All those times I had walked past war veterans begging for coin on the basilica steps, rationalizing my indifference as professional detachment. The choir found the discord and held it to the light. My knees buckled. I pressed my forehead against the cold bell metal, whispering an apology that only the night could catch. The song sharpened. In the city below, shutters blew open, though there was no wind. A blue sheen coated every reflective surface. The gargoyles were testing our equilibrium, determining whether the dissonant outnumbered the harmonious. I did not want to imagine which side of the scale I occupied. At last, in a flourish of six-part harmony, the choir concluded. Silence swooped. Even pigeons stopped their rustling. The moon, satisfied, slid a fraction west. Then a final tone rang out, single, clear, neither triumphant nor ominous. It resembled a tuning pitch, the note a musician gives before performance begins. Hope? Stone grated against stone. I dashed to the tower balcony just in time to see the gargoyles retake their rigid poses. Their glow dimmed. For a heartbeat, I thought it was over. A scream proved me wrong. Torches erupted along Peregrine Street. People were pointing at something, someone caught in moonlight. I dashed downstairs across the nave into the square. Mayor Verand knelt on the cobblestones, palms splayed. The two gargoyles from his balcony stood before him, alive, wings mantled. Their eyes were milky and immense. Uriel was there too, violin in hand. "They walked through solid wall," he murmured, awe-wrestling fear, "like it was air." The mayor lifted his head, face streaming tears. "I delayed the demolition," he stammered. "I swear, I did." The gargoyles did not reply with words. One opened its mouth, exhaled a single resonant hum. The sound vibrated in my teeth, ancient and complex, a chord built from the major triad plus a disquieting minor second. Judgment. But Veren did not crumble or turn to stone. Instead, the chord flowed through him like dye through water. His body glimmered cobalt for a moment, then returned to flesh. He collapsed forward, sobbing. I knelt beside him, expecting wounds, but he was uninjured. Changed, though, I have never seen eyes so cleanly hollowed of illusion. He looked at me and saw me, not a bell-keeper, not a petition, just another soul. He whispered, "They showed me what I build and what I break." Around us, other figures emerged, dozens of them, citizens chosen by the song. Some glowed with residual azure. Others bore lines of delicate cracks along their arms, like porcelain after a kiln mishap. Despair and relief mixed in equal parts. Yet there were fewer of them than I had feared. The city had sung mostly true. The gargoyles folded their wings, satisfied. They stepped backward, became statues again. But now they stood on the ground, among us, a permanent reminder that judgment was never purely myth. Morning crept in too soon. The blue drained from the moon until it slipped behind tenements, pale and ordinary. I climbed the bell tower for sunrise mass, my muscles thrumming as though I had sprinted through someone's prophecy. While polishing the clapper, I found a flake of cobalt on the floor, no bigger than a fingernail, edged like glass, humming faintly. I kept it in a velvet pouch. Council met at noon. Mayor Verand withdrew the demolition order without debate. Instead, he proposed retrofitting abandoned warehouses for housing and converting St. Gullien into a public conservatory for arts. The motion passed unanimously, though several councillors clutched their chests whenever the north wind carried a lingering harmony through the windows. Uriel and I toured the basilica that afternoon. Sunlight lanced through rose windows, now thrown wide in celebration. Stonecutters inspected the walls, not for removal, but restoration. Children chased coloured motes around pews. "Do you think they'll sing in 4 years?" I asked, calculating the lunar calendar. "Legends never sleep, forever," Uriel said, fingers brushing the strings of his violin. "But maybe they'll rest easier if we keep better time in between." He pivoted, raising bow to shoulder, and loosed a fragment of last night's hymn. This time the notes landed gently, unburdened by judgment. They sounded like forgiveness, learning to waltz. I took the cobalt shard from my pocket, held it up to the light, and noticed a new fissure running across its gleaming face. For a breath, I feared it had cracked in my care. Then I recognized its pattern, the shape of the basilica's rose window, as though the gargoyles themselves had signed it. That evening, when I rang vespers, the sound was brighter, as if the bell had shed some internal rust, or perhaps it was my own hearing that had changed, newly attuned to dissonance and possibility alike. Across rooftops, statues of cobalt and granite alike caught the dying sunlight and flared a quiet azure. They were asleep, yes, but never inert, watching, listening, waiting for the next blue moon to measure our melody, and I, Astra Morel, bell-keeper of a city forever poised between him and hubris, resolved that when that night arrived, the bells would sound clearer than before, and the hearts of Linares, mine included, would find a truer key to answer the choir.